A lot of times you will not have to communicate your boundaries. You will more likely show versus communicate. However, you will need to know in which situations it is best to communicate your boundaries versus when it's best to show your boundaries. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are discussing how to effectively communicate and enforce your boundaries without losing your feminine softness. A lot of times you will not have to communicate your boundaries. You will more likely show versus communicate. However, you will need to know in which situations it is best to communicate your boundaries versus when it's best to show your boundaries. Showing boundaries works well with strangers, acquaintances, and even some friends or family who are receptive to nonverbal cues. And communicating boundaries works well when someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries or if they genuinely care about you, but they don't understand your needs. So with this video, we will discuss how to communicate your boundaries, and then later on, we'll discuss some ways that you can show your boundaries. So the first way that you can communicate your boundaries is to know your non-negotiables. And this means knowing what your boundaries are so that you can effectively communicate them. Know what is a non-negotiable to you, and it will be easy for you to communicate that to people so that they can respect you in the way that you need to be respected. When you know your non-negotiables, you're able to effectively communicate them because you can speak on what your needs are and what lines people should cross, and you're able to speak on what lines people should not cross. One thing that I do want to mention is that knowing your non-negotiables does not make you rigid. It just means that you are prioritizing your needs and you are prioritizing self-respect and self-love. So the best way to know your non-negotiables is to take time to study yourself. And in the self-love video that I posted, I speak on taking time to study yourself, study who you are, study what works for you, study what disrespect means and looks like to you, study what self-love means to you. And when you know yourself on a deep level, you're able to know what your non-negotiables are, and it will be easy for you to enforce the self-love, the self-respect that you need in the things that work for you, as well as eliminating the things and the people that are not respecting your boundaries and people that are not respecting your needs. The second way to communicate your boundaries while maintaining your softness is to communicate with compassion. And with this point, it's important to approach a situation with compassion and kindness. And when you go into a situation or conversation with compassion leading, you're not automatically assuming that somebody is intentionally disrespecting you. Because as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, sometimes people are not aware of your wants and they're not aware that they are in fact crossing a boundary that is yours. So it would not work for you to just assume everybody is intentionally disrespecting you and you're showing up with full anger, full frustration, and someone genuinely does not know that they're crossing a boundary of yours. So try to approach situations, or at least know when to approach situations, with compassion and kindness, as well as acknowledging the other person's perspective. Because when you think of things from the other person's perspective, you're more likely to be kind, you're more likely to be understanding. And as you express your boundary, you will express it in a gentle way, full of compassion, kindness, and softness. And when you're expressing your boundary with softness, you are more careful with the words that you choose and the words that you select because you care to not hurt the other person's feelings. You care about not ruining a friendship, a relationship, or whatever it is because of the way you're presenting yourself, the way you're communicating your boundary. You're not communicating with the intention to hurt somebody's feelings, the intention to be rude, to be mean, but you're more compassionate, understanding, and considerate of the other person's perspective. So one example of this could be, let's say that somebody is constantly calling you, texting you, and they're needing an answer, and they do this on a frequent basis, even though they know you're at work, you're busy, or whatever it is. You could say something along the lines of, I love hearing from you, but during working hours, I need time to focus on my work. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I love starting with the first sentence being, I love hearing from you. That's a healthier way of communicating that I still want to hear from you versus stop calling me or I'm at work, just something short and abrupt that's not so kind or compassionate. But, just be selective with the words that you use and try to lead with compassion. That will automatically make your communication soft. The next way to communicate your boundaries is to practice active listening. And we've spoken this in the point earlier in which you're acknowledging the other person's perspective. And to do that, you're actively listening to what the other person is saying. And with this, being soft does not mean being a pushover, but it just means that you still stand firmly on your ground. You still stand firmly on your boundaries, but you are also acknowledging and considering the other person's perspective. And that is what makes this type of communication soft. And with active listening, this means that even if the person is saying something you don't agree with, you're not giving rude, nonverbal communications such as looking down, looking irritated, rolling your eyes, or, just showing the other person that you completely disagree with your body language and, having sighing and just doing whatever. But when you're actively listening, you could just listen. You could nod if the person is saying something you agree with or they say a point you agree with. If they don't, you could just listen. Just give them eye contact, still listen and acknowledge their perspective and then present your point and still stand firm on what your boundary is. And you don't need to change your boundary just because you're listening to somebody, but actively listening to somebody and acknowledging their point and their perspective is a form of respect to the other person. And it shows that you care about your relationship with the other person, especially if this is a family member, a friend, or somebody close to you. You don't want to make them feel disrespected just because they are speaking something that you don't agree with. And with this point, I do want to say that if somebody is actively being rude and disrespectful, you don't have to actively listen to that. Love yourself enough to walk away and remove yourself from situations where you're blatantly being disrespected. Somebody's using foul language or whatever it is. They're speaking badly about you right in front of your face. They're speaking badly about your family members or whatever it is. You don't have to engage in that type of communication. Don't actively listen to that. Walk away, remove yourself. You don't need to fight back and just do all those things that will paint you in a bad light. Know when to remove yourself. But when I'm speaking of active listening, I mean that the other person is also presenting their point in a respectful way so that you can understand what they are trying to communicate to you. And other ways that you could show active listening is by reflecting and rephrasing what the person is saying, asking clarifying questions, and acknowledge the other person's feelings. But again, do not change your boundaries. Do not move your boundaries just because you are actively listening. This is solely for showing respect to the other person that is being respectful to you. And when you're showing respect to other people, that is a form of softness. That is a form of showing love and care for the relationship that you have with this person. The next way to softly communicate your boundaries is to use I statements. And with this point, when you focus on speaking about your feelings, versus blaming the other person, it does not escalate a situation because when you use words such as you, it automatically puts the person in defense mode. And at that point, they're likely not going to listen to you because they're thinking of what their response will be to you. Or at that point, they're just speaking over you because they have to defend themselves. So try to speak more from I feel, I need, I would appreciate, just I statements. That way people can't argue with what you're feeling. Nobody can correct what you feel. If your feelings are hurt, nobody can tell you you should not be hurt. You feel what you feel. And if people love you and respect you, they will honor when you say, I feel hurt. They will respect when you use I feel statements, and they will respect when you use I statements when you communicate with them. The next way to communicate your boundaries is to remain calm and composed. And with this, your softness shines when when you are able to maintain your calmness. Even when someone crosses a boundary, if you're able to respond with grace versus anger, it will paint you in a good light. It will maintain your softness within yourself too, as well as to others around you. When you have a reputation of someone that's exploding on other people, someone that's angry and all of that, it does not promote softness to other people. And you cannot convince people otherwise when they have witnessed you being angry and just offloading all your negative emotions on somebody. Even though the other person is wrong, they'll still remember how you exploded on the other person. So remember that responding with grace is a more mature way of communicating. And this is one thing that unfortunately society tends to celebrate, is when somebody is just loud and being mean, rude, and just, unloading their anger on somebody. I feel like society celebrates that, but the truth is it takes so much strength to not do that. It takes so much strength to remain composed in a situation where somebody is testing your patience. And the fact that you're able to do that, that will speak to your maturity. That will speak to your healthy communication skills. That will speak to you as a person in general, because you're not stooping low. You chose the higher road, and that is a more respectable road. People will remember that you responded effectively with a calm tone, assertively, and still made your point. And another thing to remember when you're speaking from a place of anger, nobody is listening to the other. If you're speaking loud, the other person gets louder, you get louder. At that point, nobody's hearing the other. And are you really having a conversation? Are you really having a conversation that's effective? This is where the power is of knowing when to walk away and leave a disrespectful situation. That speaks so much more than staying around and entertaining somebody on an angry level. It just elevates your blood pressure levels, and that's so unnecessary. You risk having a reputation of being an angry woman or being an angry person, and that is just not cute ever. So know when to walk away, compose yourself, and then get back to the conversation. Especially in a workplace setting, you will not win points by being angry and offloading on your coworkers. Take time, know when to step away. Take time, calm down, and then come back to the conversation and speak in a calm way, in an effective way, in an assertive way, and present your point effectively. The next way to communicate your boundaries is consistency. Be consistent with your boundaries, and this means do not waver on your boundaries. And I touched on this on a point earlier on active listening. Just because you're listening to somebody's point does not mean you should be changing your boundaries because somebody has convinced you to step outside your own boundaries. Respect yourself enough to maintain your boundaries and be consistent in enforcing your boundaries. This will teach people to respect you, and this will teach you to respect yourself. And when you're constantly wavering on your boundaries and you're taking them seriously one day, you're not taking them seriously the next day, people will not take you seriously. Think of this scenario. If you have a friend that's always an hour late and you keep saying, oh, I'm going to wait today. Oh, the next day I'm not going to wait, but then you wait. I'm not going to wait, but then you still wait for them anyway. They will not take you seriously until you actually do leave and say, I'm not waiting an hour for you. And you enforce that boundary and you respect your own time. People pay attention to action. And that's why I spoke on earlier in the introduction. When you show your boundaries, that is also a very effective way of enforcing your boundaries and communicating them. So remember that being consistent teaches people to respect your time, to respect your energy, and to respect your emotional space. And another point that I want to mention on communicating your boundaries, this is more to do within yourself. Release guilt. Do not carry the guilt of enforcing your boundaries. Do not carry the guilt of how other people respond to your boundaries. Instead, reframe your mind to understand that boundaries are a form of self-love and self-respect. And also remember that you need to erase the people-pleasing mindset if this is something that you struggle with. And when you continuously enforce your boundaries and communicate them, this will increase your level of self-love and self-respect because you are considered, you're heard, you're respected, and that will promote your mental health, that will promote your emotional health. Also, it will prevent resentment towards yourself because you're constantly allowing people to walk over you. You're constantly allowing people to disrespect you when you do not enforce your boundaries. And also prevents resentment towards other people because they are not respecting you. They are not respecting your boundaries. So know that boundaries do play an important role. And anytime that you feel guilty, know that this is a way of preserving and maintaining your relationships because you're preventing resentment in the process of enforcing and communicating your boundaries. And also remember that when you enforce your boundaries, it prevents burnout on your end because you are not in a place where you're constantly accommodating other people, but you are able to take care of yourself. You're able to work on your self-love. You're able to work on your self-respect, which goes back to the point of it helps your emotional and your mental health. And a final point I want to mention on releasing guilt is that know that people will take time to adjust to your boundaries. So if they react or respond a certain way, give people time to adjust to your boundaries, especially if you're new to enforcing them and communicating them. People are used to receiving you a certain way. And when you change by enforcing boundaries and by communicating them, people will be taken back a little bit, but know that the people that truly love you, the people who genuinely care about you will adjust and they will respect your boundaries. The people that do not respect your boundaries, you do not want them in your life anyway because they will continue to bring you down with feeling disrespected and continue to make you not feel considered. So welcome the people that stay after you've enforced your boundaries because those are your true people. Those are the people who truly love you and truly respect you. So for this part of the video, I wanted to give examples of how communicating your boundaries in a soft yet effective way would sound like. So the first example would be at work, and let's say that somebody is taking credit for work that you did. And you would say something like, I appreciate your enthusiasm for the project, but just to clarify, I was responsible for a specific task, and I would love for our efforts to be recognized properly. The second would be with a family member, and let's say that they're giving you unwanted advice or criticism. You could say something like, I truly appreciate your concern and guidance. Right now, I am taking time to figure things out on my own. And your trust in my process means so much to me. So the next example is in a romantic relationship, and you need to communicate the need for emotional space. And you could say something like, I care so much about our relationship, and I want to give this conversation the attention it deserves. I just need a little time to gather my thoughts so that I can share them with you calmly and openly. And the final example could be with friends. And let's say you need to decline an invite because you just need time to yourself for your self-care. You could say something like, I love our friendship and enjoy spending time with you. I need some time to recharge and take care of myself. I'm hoping to join you at the next event, and I really appreciate your understanding. And I love these examples because they are so soft yet effective. You're not hurting the other person's feelings. You're considering the other person. For example, the one with the friend where you're telling them you love spending time with them. With the family member, you're telling them, I appreciate your concern, but you're also effectively communicating what your needs are, what your wants are in that moment. So I wanted to include these examples because I personally learn a lot more from examples, and I thought that I could include them if there's somebody out there that's like me that learns from examples as well. So now we will discuss how to show your boundaries, and these are just as effective as communicating them. And the first way is showing behavioral cues. And this could look like gently redirecting the conversation if it's on a topic that makes you feel uncomfortable and the topic is going towards something you don't necessarily want to talk about or something you don't enjoy talking about. You have the ability to redirect the conversation and change it, but do it in a gentle way. Don't be so abrupt to where the person feels disrespected that you just completely change the topic. And another way is to consistently take time for yourself. And in this way, people adjust to what your schedule is, what your self-care schedule is. And this could look like putting your phone on Do Not Disturb starting at 10 p.m. People will eventually adjust to knowing not to send you messages or, send you things that wake you up at 10 p.m., 11, 12, or whatever time. But people will learn to be more respectful, knowing that they will not get a response from you after 10 p.m. You don't necessarily have to communicate that boundary unless somebody asks like, oh, I sent you something, or I've been sending you something, you don't respond after this time. Then yes, you can confirm that that is a boundary of yours. But most likely people will get used to the fact that you will respond at 9, 10 a.m. or whatever time it is the next day in the morning. They will know that that's when they'll get their response from you. They'll adjust to knowing what your schedule is and what your boundaries look like. So some ways that you can gently redirect the conversation is by saying statements such as, I'm not in the right headspace to hear this, but I would love to hear more when I am in the right mental space. Or simply saying something like, let's talk about insert a different topic here. Or saying something as simple as, I don't have the time to talk about that right now, but I would love to hear more later. The next way that you can show your boundaries without communicating them is by body language and tone. And this means maintaining a calm eye contact and a soft tone when you assert yourself. And this goes back to a point that we spoke on earlier, where you don't have to show rude body language when you're talking to somebody. You can still be kind and considerate as long as the person is showing you the same respect. And you can still assert yourself in a soft tone and make your point effectively without being rude or mean. Maintaining a soft tone, maintaining your calmness is how you communicate your boundaries while maintaining your softness and while maintaining your femininity. And also on showing body language to communicate your boundaries, this also goes back to a point we spoke on earlier when I said remove yourself from situations and conversations that are escalating, where you're being blatantly disrespected, where people are speaking to you in a way that you don't deserve to be spoken to. People are being loud, mean, rude, trying to humiliate you. Walk away. Remove yourself. You do not need to stay in the face of somebody that's disrespecting you. You do not need to stay in situations or events where you're not being honored, where it's not serving you, and where you're not feeling peaceful, where you're not feeling loved, where you're not feeling calm. Give yourself the love to walk away and remove yourself from situations that do not serve you. Walking away is you showing a boundary without having to communicate it, and it's a very effective way to show a boundary because people will always remember that if I act this way, she will walk away. If I act this way, she will not stay around to entertain my foolishness. Whatever it may be, use the very effective strategy of walking away to effectively show and enforce your boundaries. The third way that you can show your boundaries is by creating distance when needed. And with this, when you have someone that's consistently disrespecting you, and this is someone that you can't necessarily eliminate from your life, limit the amount of time that you spend with them. And if they care about you, they'll notice that you're not spending time with them. They'll notice that you're not entertaining so much of their unhealthy conversations. If, let's say, for example, this person loves to gossip and this is something that you're not into, you don't want to continue this behavior anymore. When you make yourself less available for that type of behavior, that type of conversation, people will notice and they will eventually begin to not come to you with gossip because they won't get the response that they want. Someone who loves to gossip and is speaking to somebody else that loves to gossip, like the reaction that they get from the other person that loves to gossip, like keeps them going back to that person because of the excitement of that behavior. But if you don't enjoy gossip and you're just like, okay, like they tell you whatever it is and you're just like, okay, and you keep going on to the next thing, like you're not entertaining, you're not also adding on to I heard, I know, I think. But, you're just like, okay. And then you like go back to redirecting the topic onto something else. People will eventually pick up on that. And a person who loves to gossip will not come back to you to gossip because they will not get the response, the reaction that they want. So distancing yourself when needed is an effective way of communicating your boundaries. And also with people that you cannot necessarily fully eliminate yourself from, like let's say it's coworkers or whatever it is, it goes back to not being available for things that do not help your peace, especially when it's things that are not work related. And another way that you can show distance is by prioritizing your needs. And this means not rearranging your schedule to accommodate people and neglecting and abandoning yourself and your needs in the process. When you schedule your needs in your calendar or throughout your day, people who love you and people who respect you will work around the times that you are available for them. And that also helps you because you will give them the best version of yourself because you are fully available and fully ready to give them the attention that they deserve. And the final way that you show boundaries and enforce them is by prioritizing your self-care. When you put your self-care first, everything else will work around that. Making yourself a priority is so important. It's a form of self-love. It's a form of self-respect. And it is important to make your self-care a priority. And when you make your peace first, you make your mental well-being and your emotional well-being first, you will easily enforce and show your boundaries as well as communicate them when needed, because you know what you need to care for yourself so that you can show up as the best version of you. And finally, on showing self-care to yourself as part of your boundaries, it goes back to the point of not feeling guilty and continuing to care and nurture yourself despite the guilt, despite the pressure that you may be feeling, despite the way people are reacting and responding. Continue to maintain your boundary, and by showing that you will continue to maintain your boundary, the people that love you will adjust. The people that love you will work with you, and the people that don't will leave, and those people should leave anyway, because you do not want people in your life that are disrespecting you, blatantly or not, and you just don't want to be around people who don't respect your boundaries. Continue to maintain your boundaries regardless of how people are responding or reacting to them, because your self-love, your self-respect comes first. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was effective. If you're someone that's working on enforcing boundaries, if you're someone that's working on communicating boundaries, I would love to hear your comments as well as your feedback. I truly enjoyed making this video. It's always a pleasure spending time with you in these videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you again for watching my video. I wanted to say, take a moment to check out my online jewelry store, Pretty Dainty. It is faith-based jewelry that is both elegant and beautiful, and when you wear it, it is a reminder of God's love and His promises for us and His plans for our lives. I will link the website below, and happy shopping with lots of love, Nia.